Welcome to the YMCA of Greater Boston Spark 2021, presented by Wing Companies. Thank you for joining us tonight as we celebrate our collective impact. I'm coming to you from outside the Oak Square YMCA in Brighton, where I started my YMCA journey as a board member, helping to bring this Y to life for the community. We would love to meet in person. However, for the safety of everyone, we're celebrating virtually again this year. We still have a wonderful program planned for you this evening. You'll meet families positively impacted by the YMCA's work, hear from leading women in philanthropy today, and celebrate with us Spark honoree Shari Redstone. We're also auctioning 8 inspiring photographs taken by YMCA youth through a community partnership that paired young people with photojournalists from across the globe. Proceeds from the sale will go towards supporting our teen programs and provide a stipend to our young artists. Follow the link in the chat to bid on these one-of-a-kind photos. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce the President and CEO of the YMCA of Greater Boston, James Morton, who'll get this celebration started. James?
Thank you, Evelyn, and good evening. And thanks to the many of you who have joined us this evening. I am here on location in East Boston at our Hunger Prevention Hub. And as you can see, we've got Cheerios and peanut butter, oatmeal, carrots, sweet potatoes, just about anything and everything a family might need for a healthy meal. And in the foreground, we've got tomorrow's deliveries being prepared. Since the beginning of the pandemic in March of 2020, the YMCA of Greater Boston has packed, served, and delivered, in partnership with others, over 11 million meals to children, families, adults, and seniors. Back in March of 2020, schools closed and everyone, with the exception of essential workers, were asked to quarantine. We knew that as a provider of 837,000 meals in 2019, that children, families, and seniors would need food in order to avoid hunger and in order to survive and put themselves in the best position to fight COVID-19. We responded quickly and activated our hunger prevention program to fight food insecurity. And as the pandemic persists, the need for healthy food continues, and our hunger prevention program continues to deliver meals to the most vulnerable members of our community. We believe that no one should go to bed hungry at night, especially our children. We have not done this alone, and that is the theme of our 2021 Spark Celebration, presented by Wing Companies. The theme is, the Y plus you equals nothing we can't do. We learned during the last 20 months that partnership and collaboration is the solution to many of Boston's most critical challenges. We've also learned that together we can ignite transformational change for a better us and a better Greater Boston community. Yes, together we can assure equity for all, build bright futures, end hunger, improve community health, and eliminate barriers to economic stability and more. And tonight we celebrate our collective work. We celebrate you, our partners. This evening, you will be inspired by some of the most amazing individuals and hear from some of the most powerful and disruptive women philanthropists who are changing the philanthropic landscape for good. We are extremely excited and humbled to honor arguably one of the most powerful women in media today and a leading philanthropist. She has become a champion disruptor and is working with the YMCA of Greater Boston and others to create a more diverse and inclusive community by opposing hate based upon race and religion. She believes the best way to accomplish this objective is by teaching children how to combat racism and anti-Semitism. With her support, we are working with the Harvard Graduate School of Education to develop the best and most age-appropriate strategies to accomplish this objective. The disruptor I am speaking of is philanthropist and chair of Viacom CBS, Shari Redstone. Shari is this year's recipient of the 1851 YMCA of Greater Boston Legacy Award. She is being honored and recognized for her commitment to positive social change and educational equity. Permit me, on behalf of the children and families we serve, to thank you, Shari, for your generosity of spirit and your love of humanity. Thanks for being with us this evening.
Thank you, James, and welcome everyone to the Spark Party. I'm excited to be here. My name is Betsy Burnett, and it is my great honor to serve on the board of directors of the Greater Boston YMCA. And tonight, it is my great privilege to introduce all of you to Miss Shari Redstone. Shari is a global business leader. She's a devoted philanthropist, and she's my very dear friend. And tonight, we honor her with the YMCA Legacy Award. Through her generosity, thousands of preschool children and their families will learn the value of cultural diversity, learning about people who are different, and opposing anti-Semitism and opposing racism. So Shari, welcome to the party and congratulations on your award.
Well, thank you very much, Betsy, and it is a pleasure to be here. And I'm really happy to have the opportunity to talk with you about an issue that is so important to me and that I feel so passionate about. And while I am very appreciative of the recognition given to me by the Y, what I'm really excited about is the visibility that is being given to an issue that is so important to all of us as individuals, as families, as communities, and as a country.
And Shari, I'm curious, why at this point in time did you decide it was so important to have this kind of program? And why did you also feel it was so important to direct it to preschool children and their families?
Well, I think we've all seen a tremendous rise in anti-Semitism in this country over the last several years. And while prejudice against the Jews and other minority groups is not new, the targeted violence against Jews and the rise of hate crimes across this country is unprecedented. And I strongly believe that if we're going to create a world that will be safe for our children and representative of the core values upon which our society was built, the time to act is now. And what better way to address this issue than starting with the children and the families who are really the foundation of our future. And this is why I am working with the Y to create a program that will reach preschool children and their families and help them to understand the importance of respecting cultural diversity and opposing racism and anti-Semitism. I really believe we have to act now, and that if we can create an environment and experiences for children that bring them together and show them the joy of diversity and inclusion, we can start to bring about the changes that are required to create a world with more love and less hate.
Shari, we are so, so grateful for your support. And my last question is this: there are so many organizations that would love to collaborate with you on this type of mission. Why did you choose the YMCA of Greater Boston?
Well, actually, Betsy, I chose it because of you. In fact, last summer, I taught my grandchildren civics. Their homework assignment each week was to write down a question to ask their parents at dinner about what they had studied that day. I not only realized from that experience how much our children want to learn, how capable they are of learning, but how important it is to involve their families in this process. And I started thinking about all of the conversations we had had over the years about the important work that takes place at the Y. And I thought that the Y would be uniquely positioned in the community to create an exciting and comprehensive program that could include both preschool kids and their families in addressing these issues. You know, I understood from you that the Y is not only so trusted by everyone, and I hear that all the time, but has such a tremendous footprint in Boston that serves thousands of preschool children and their families. And I thought that this would be a great place to pilot this program and potentially roll it out and replicate it throughout the YMCA network across the country. I really do believe that the time to act is now. You know, we all have an enormous opportunity and a responsibility to have an impact on the issues that are important to us. And I'm really excited to be working with the Y to create and roll out a program that could have a significant impact on children and families in Boston and hopefully across our country. I think this is an amazing opportunity, and the Y just brings so much to the table to accomplish these goals.
You know, Shari, like I've always said to you, you're the best, and we are excited to collaborate with you. Your passion for this project is matched by ours. So congratulations again on your award. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us. And now we'll toss it back to the virtual studio and the rest of the Spark Party, where everyone will learn more about how your donations can help spark a change in someone's life.
My grandchildren needed an after-school program. When the pandemic started, I had 3 kids in the house doing Zoom meetings. The Y opened their doors so that the kids who were doing Zoom meetings could come outside of the home and be at the Y. So that was a great help because I thought I was going crazy. 3 different Zoom meetings as well as myself on Zoom meetings because I work with at-risk kids. But they were very supportive. The kids were safe. They made sure they wore their mask. They made sure they were getting their lesson. They've been really supportive during the pandemic, before, after, and still to this day. Michael gave them a run for their money. They gave him a break and they opened the door for him right back up. They haven't given up on him. And you know, a lot of times when kids come to you with people with behavioral issues, it's tough. Some people want to give up, but the Y has yet to do that. And I appreciate them more and more every day. People, if they want their kids to have an after-school program, the Y should be one of them because I really have nothing but good things to say about the Y.
For someone who had not been physically active for like quite a while, and especially during the pandemic, it was really, I would say, like a lifesaver. Walking in general has become easier and something that I enjoy that doesn't feel like a workout, a walk. A walk actually felt like a workout for a long while.
The first time I was able to just walk a distance and not just be out of breath like I ran a marathon, it was amazing. I was like, wow, I can do this, and it felt awesome.
I know I'm not going to be back to what I was before my accident, but I've improved substantially with help from Paul and other people here at the Y, and I think I'm doing pretty good, all things considered, you know, so I like the Y. The Y is a great place.
I moved to USA from Nepal in 2015. Having a different cultural background, language barrier, and lack of hard skill, I could not get the professional job that I was looking to pursue my American dream. The best thing that has happened to me since I moved to US was joining to YMCA Training Inc. YMCA Training Inc. will teach you about the computer skills, how to communicate professionally. I'm still on my way to learn new things and skills every day, so I want to thank YMCA Training Inc.
You're making a big difference. Kids are looking up to you. You can't be what you can't see. But by seeing you, they're seeing all kinds of possibilities about what they might become someday.
I've been working in the pantry, so food distribution. I love the Y, I love its opportunities for people my age, and I do always recommend to my friends that it's like, hey, come work at the Y with me. It's like a family here.
In my own life, I grew up poor. I'm here because I know what it feels like to live in poverty. I know what the threat of hunger feels like. I know what the embarrassment of needing food feels like. And so the work we do today is exactly the work that we should be doing. I can't imagine doing anything else.
Good evening. My name is Pierre Lucien, and I am a member of the YMCA of Greater Boston's Young Professionals Board, and I'm joined by my fellow YP board member, Ali Parent.
Hi, Pierre, and hello to everyone joining us virtually this evening. You've heard tonight some powerful examples of the transformational change that happens when the Y is added to the equation to solve our community's most pressing issues.
I can tell you from my own experience. 21 years ago, when my family came to America from Haiti, the Y became the proverbial village for our family. The Y was instrumental in helping our family to thrive despite my mother's unfamiliarity with the American child care practices, insufficient resources, and the constant struggle to balance working, going to school, and parenting 3 boys during the summer. Thankfully, the local YMCA offered a summer day camp that my brother and I attended. Of course, there were the games and physical activity, but there were also the educational field trips, such as the one to the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island, during which I learned about different waves of immigration to the United States. This was not just a place where you threw your kids while you worked, but an enriching and engaging experience that is among my most memorable experiences growing up. It is a huge reason why I am still so engaged with the Y now, not only as a board member, but also as a member. I'm actively taking advantage of the offerings of my local YMCA. Now, we all know this was part of camp, but you see, as a kid, I had to be rescued from drowning on 2 separate occasions. So learning this potentially life-saving skill from Will is just one more reason I owe so much to the YMCA of Greater Boston.
Wow, Pierre, that is just awesome. Living it and being part of this amazing organization. And after such a trying year, we ask that you think about what you can do to donate to the Y, to keep our program strong, to keep our children safe and eager to learn, to keep our teenagers engaged and productive, and to fill our parents with confidence that the Y is exactly the right place for their family. We need resources to keep our programs thriving, and I want you to think about joining Pierre and me in providing critical support for YMCA programs.
So please hit that Donate Now button on your screen and be part of building a strong and stable future for the Y. A $5,000 donation can enable an adult to enroll in Training Inc. and find a pathway to family-sustaining wages. A $1,000 donation provides financial assistance for 2 months of care for working families in one of our early education centers.
$250 donation provides 100 bags of groceries to feed hungry families. A $100 donation supplies curriculum, books, and art supplies for our after-school programs. And just $50 provides 10 boxes of hygiene products to help keep families healthy in Greater Boston. Please consider making a donation to support the Y. No donation is too small. Anything you can do to support this incredible cause is greatly appreciated.
We also want to remind you to check out the Youth Voices silent auction by following the link in the chat and visiting the items tab. Check it out and support their work too.
Thank you for your support and for joining us tonight. I know that when we join together, we can solve Greater Boston's most critical issues, which is why now I am pleased to recognize the generous support from Wynn Companies, our presenting sponsor of Spark. Please join me in welcoming Terry Benskin, Chief Operating Officer of Wynn Companies, to our virtual stage. Terry?
Good evening. My name is Terry Benskin, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Wynn Companies. Wynn Companies is pleased to be the presenting sponsor of Spark 2021 and tonight's panel discussion. We've experienced firsthand through the Y's food programs that an investment in the Y is an investment in improved health and stability for the residents of our properties and the community. We see the value that adding the Y brings to the equation. It is my great privilege to introduce tonight's panel discussion. Tonight, we turn our virtual stage over to a panel of women that the Y has recognized as philanthropy disruptors. Collectively, they represent some of the largest philanthropic institutions in our community. Through their leadership, they are tackling head-on our community's largest societal issues, including equity, social justice, and education. They work in partnership with communities and community leaders to bring about real change. I look forward to hearing more about their work and their thoughts on how women are shaping the future of philanthropy. Please welcome our moderator, Katie Everett, Executive Director of the Lynch Foundation, joined by Melissa MacDonnell, President of the Liberty Mutual Foundation, Pam Norley, President of Fidelity Charitable, and Rebekah Salwasser, Executive Director of the Red Sox Foundation and Executive Vice President of Social Impact for the Boston Red Sox.
Good evening. I'm Katie Everett. I'm the Executive Director of the Lynch Foundation, and thanks for joining us this evening. It is my pleasure to moderate what will, I promise, be an extraordinary conversation with some extraordinary women around women in philanthropy. I will do my best to try to facilitate and moderate, but I could spend hours with each one of these individuals alone, and so bear with us. Over the last 2 years, the YMCA of Greater Boston has facilitated several conversations with stakeholders and community leaders across the city and the community around diversity and equity. And this year, women philanthropists stepped up and allowed them to serve and respond to the immediate needs in the community deeply affected by the pandemic. Tonight, we're going to talk about it with some of these leading philanthropists and have them share their perspective and experience about what does it mean to be a woman and play this significant role in philanthropy. So I'm going to start with having each one of the panelists introduce themselves. If you just say a little bit about your role in philanthropy, your connection to the Greater Boston YMCA. I'm going to ask directly below me, Pam. Pam, could you introduce yourself and just let us know where you're from?
Yes, so good evening, everyone. Hi, I'm Pam Norley. I'm president of Fidelity Charitable, and I'm here on behalf of the many, many Fidelity Charitable donors who have given to the YMCA over the many decades that we have been sponsoring the Donor Advised Fund at Fidelity Charitable. And, you know, I would say that just it's phenomenal in terms of giving nationally to YMCA about close to $500 million in about 41,000 grants, but giving just to the YMCA of Greater Boston, it's been about $23 million in about 1,200 grants. And, you know, I have a personal connection to the Y as well, because in my early days of, you know, raising my young children, we use the Y for swim lessons. We use the Y for daycare. It's an organization that's kind of near and dear to my heart personally as well.
Great. Thanks so much, Pam. I appreciate it. Melissa, could you please share a little bit about yourself and your connection to the Y?
Sure. Hi, Katie. Hi, everyone. I am the president of the Liberty Mutual Foundation, and I've been involved with the Y in so many different ways for so many years. I have to tell you that one of the absolute highlights of my career was speaking at the Training Inc. graduation many, many years ago. So anyone who has not been to Training Inc. graduation, you absolutely have to go. Also, we've been involved so many different ways. The Brighton Y, which really set the bar for inclusion for people with disabilities. And you know, and over the years, even last year with the food distribution, and then this year with the learning loss programming. Of course, I've been a member of the Y as well. But I think it just really highlights that the holistic view that the Y takes with the community and its commitment to elevating all people so that they can achieve their fullest selves.
Great. Thanks so much. And last but not least, Becca, could you share a little bit about yourself and your relationship to philanthropy and the Y?
Of course. Hi, Katie, and thanks to the YMCA of Greater Boston for having me. So in my role as Executive Vice President of Social Impact for the Boston Red Sox, I help oversee all of our DE&I efforts. I also have the role of being the Executive Director of the Red Sox Foundation, which many people don't know is actually a nonprofit public charity. So we spend most of our time fundraising dollars, which we then fund internally our own programs and partnerships. But then we're fortunate enough to have excess of which we give away to the community in New England. Red Sox Nation is fairly large, as you know, so we try to extend our footprint all over New England. And so I have the honor and privilege of overseeing all of that giving, as well as all of our direct service work. My connection to the Y began formally about 3 years ago when I joined as a board member. So had a really unique opportunity to kind of get under the hood and see how it operates and how they're really creating the magic that happens every day at all of the Ys across Greater Boston and across the Commonwealth. So really excited to be here and part of this conversation.
Great, thanks so much. And having the opportunity and privilege to work with all three of you actually for several years now, I think, over the course of the last 250 years, women have played a significant role in philanthropy in a variety of different ways. And I'm wondering, recently the gift that Mackenzie Scott publicly made, the $8.5 billion to invest in charities, has really highlighted one aspect of the role that women play in philanthropy. Could you talk a little bit about how you see that affected sort of your roles in this current day and age? And Becca, I'm going to go backwards and start with you first. And could you answer that question for us?
Sure. Yeah. What I love about what Mackenzie's done, I'm speaking as if I know her first name basis, right? What I love about her is that she just sort of threw the rules to the wind, right? And sort of did her own thing without some of the bureaucracies that some of us face when we want to make gifts, right? Checking this box, checking with this person. She sort of said, no, I'm going to go direct to the need and fund and believe in the leaders of organizations that are really doing critical work on the ground. And by the way, I'm going to do it with no strings attached. And so I love that approach. And I think she's just been groundbreaking in so many ways to show that women not only have the bravery and brilliance, but also the capital to make change. And so it's just everything she's done. Mackenzie, my friend, first name basis, I'm following you, and it's just so exciting to watch.
Great, thank you. I'm going to have you go next, Melissa.
I have to give a shout out to my girlfriend, Mackenzie, as well. She, just like Becca said, I mean, she is impressive. The 8.5 billion that she's infused into the community, the underfunded and overlooked, I mean, amen to that. And you can see that in her portfolio. She has such a hardcore equity lens and the no strings attached. I mean, this is really a change so that organizations don't have to do this patchwork financing. So, I mean, hats off to her.
Great, thank you. And Pam?
Yes, I mean, I think, as you mentioned, Katie, women have always been on the, at the table with philanthropy and have always volunteered and been very engaged in kind of driving the family's involvement in giving. But I think this is revolutionary. It's transformational, because I think as everyone has mentioned, with the way that she has just said, I'm going to take a look at the most underserved organizations around the globe. I'm going to take a look at working with these organizations and trusting their leadership to make the best decisions on where to deploy the capital. And I'm hopeful that this is a whole new trend for giving, that everyone will take a page out of the book and make sure that they're thinking about this as well. Because as we saw with the pandemic, I mean, it was really health and human services that really needed, like organizations like the Y, that really need the support at this time. They're serving all the vulnerable in our communities who are even made more vulnerable with the global pandemic.
Right, and I couldn't agree with you more. And that's rolling right into my next question for you. So thank you for serving me up a softball. Is that okay, Becca? Good analogy. I should never do sports analogies, by the way. Yeah, I shouldn't do it. So it's because the gifts that Mackenzie Scott did make and invest in was a basic services, right? And the Y actually across the country was a huge beneficiary, and the Greater Boston Y was one of those to be a recipient. Along with several other real prominent female philanthropists, including, Shari Redstone. Why do you think women philanthropists are directing their giving to organizations like the Y, or to those who are serving sort of basic needs? And why did your organizations or you feel an affinity to give to the Ys? Could you, I'll pick on Melissa next. Melissa, just to change it up a little bit.
Well, I think, Katie, that, research shows that women are very motivated by empathy. And I think that many women care deeply about people who are marginalized. They care about mothers who need affordable daycare. They care about people with disabilities who deserve to be involved and have opportunities in the community, about young people who might be homeless or struggling, who need the opportunity to enter the workforce, neighbors who are hungry. I mean, gosh, I could go on and on. Children who are living in poverty. who need an after school place where they can grow and learn and frankly have some fun, and be kids. And I think that that's, a big appeal, that, that's what the Y does. And I think that, for us, I think that the Y's response during COVID really epitomizes who they are. I mean, the Y jumped into action. They did not have the money. I mean, they had the infrastructure. They had the relationships. And I'd say on another level, they had the spiritual mandate. And they got it done. And I'm seeing the same thing with the learning loss. They are there.
Wonderful, thanks. And Becca?
Yeah, I mean, Melissa just said it so well. It's we invest in the why, and hopefully this is why Mackenzie saw the need to invest as well, as they center the most vulnerable populations in all of their work, and they are driven by that as opposed to driven by what do we have in our bank account, and let's figure out what we can do with that. No, let's center the need, center the most vulnerable, and we will get it done, and we'll find a way. And as Melissa said, their responsiveness during the pandemic, and who knew what was coming around every corner, they were there, and they had the people, and they had the heart, and they had the motivation, and they had the spaces and the centers, and they were just doing it all the time, every single day, and it was relentless. Their commitment to servicing those in need, and that's exactly why the Red Sox Foundation supports. And I'm sure that's why Mackenzie Scott saw that she could invest in their ability to sort of scale that support too across Greater Boston.
Great. And how about you, Pam?
Well, no, I think, back to the point of that women are in the community, they're volunteering much more than others. And so they have the heartbeat. And I think when you have such basic needs there of food and security and safety and community, you look to those nonprofits like the YMCA that are doing that in a holistic way. And so I think Mackenzie Scott and other women who recognize the health and human services needs kind of turn to those organizations in the time of crisis to help support the vulnerable. We do at Fidelity Charitable, we do an annual report where we list the top 20 organizations that our donors give to by transactions every year. And for the first time since doing the report, we had 3 health and human services organizations on the list. And of course, they were focused on, we want to get the Y on the list, but they were focused on food insecurity, Feeding America, Meals on Wheels, and World Central Kitchen. And I mean, it's remarkable that those organizations haven't been on that list before that. But I do think that we've all been vulnerable through this pandemic. We all have had anxiety and insecurities, and we have either faced it with ourselves or our family or our friends or neighbors. And I think you turn to organizations like the Y that are deeply seated in the community with long legacies of understanding how to get things done. And I think to Melissa's point, they know how to get things done. And it was naturally an organization that someone like a Mackenzie Scott, who was looking to address basic human health and services needs, would turn to a Y for providing support.
Yeah, I think that makes so much sense, and everything you all just said completely resonates with us, and why we directed a significant amount to the Y and to immediate needs for the community during the pandemic. We are also transitioning from West Central male leadership here to 3 powerful females coming in, second generation, and we're not the only foundation experiencing that. We're seeing, massive transition of wealth happening right now for the first time ever in our country. We're also seeing that women hold 40% of the global wealth, right, for the first time. We have more female college enrollees than ever before, outpacing the males pretty significantly. And yet this pandemic displaced women most, right, out of our employment, especially Black and Brown women. And how do we see that opportunity? What opportunity do we play as female philanthropists in ensuring that we get these women back in, and we focus on closing this opportunity and economic gap amongst our fellow females, right? Could someone, how do you see that role and that opportunity playing for you, Pam?
Yeah, so I mean, generally, I mean, Americans are incredibly generous. They gave away more than $460 billion just in 2020. The numbers are just remarkable, but a very small percentage of that has gone to women and girls traditionally. And I think first starting with Melinda French Gates, recognizing that women drive and can change communities given their deep-seated knowledge of what's going on and how to get things done. And, she wrote a great book called The Moment of Lift, where she tells the stories of a lot of remarkable women across the world who, by just providing them with some little, kind of little funding to get a business going, can drive and change, an entire community or region. And so with all this data that's now coming out, I think a lot of people are turning and recognizing the power that women and girls have, making up 50% of the world, 40% of college enrollees, still making some progress, a little bit discouraged on the McKinsey report that came out earlier this week and the progress we're making, given that the pandemic has largely, a little bit disrupted some of the progress we were making. But I think more and more data is now available and people are recognizing the change that women and girls, the investment in women and girls can make on a community in addressing some of these intractable issues. And so I think you're going to continue to see more focus on that. And it was wonderful to her to bring not only the focus on women and girls, but also on equality overall.
Mm-hmm. Great. And Becca, how do you see your role?
Yeah, no, I mean, again, agreed with what Pam said. And it's sort of what exactly McKinsey is doing, is recognizing who is suffering most, who is at need most, and targeting deeply and intentionally those populations with deep investments that are sustainable and not just sort of this 1 year small gift, good luck. And so that's the way we're trying to really address larger systemic issues, is make deep investments. And one way we're doing that at the Red Sox Foundation is working closely with Christina Gordon and the Women's Foundation of Boston, who were founded several years ago for exactly this reason, noticing that tiny percentages of giving and philanthropy is directed towards women and girls in the US. And so making sure that we have organizations that are really mission focused and specifically addressing these needs against targeted outcomes is one clear way to move the needle really in those areas.
Great. And Melissa?
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to kind of the economic empowerment issue for women is childcare. The supply of childcare has, shrunk. The number of children who needing care has gone up, and in particular in low-income communities. And COVID has really exacerbated that spread. And we gotta get it that, without affordable, reliable childcare, that has a huge impact on a parent's ability to participate in the workforce and become economically stable. And I would say, the Y is the largest provider of state licensed childcare and also, given the nature of the neighborhood branch network, I think that the Y can play a really pivotal role in addressing this gap. And I think another issue related to childcare that I just want to raise up is ensuring that early education teachers actually earn a living wage. I do believe that the country is starting to look at childcare differently, and I really do believe that it is a system that really needs investment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think probably as all working moms will amen that.
Yeah.
Okay. So last and final question, and Becca, I'll have you go first, is how do you see philanthropy changing and women's role in it over the next 10 to 20 years?
Well, this is going to be slightly aspirational, but I do think we're on this trajectory, and certainly McKinsey has sort of pushed us there or jolted us there, but a continuation of trust-based philanthropy leading the way, really investing and trusting the leadership people like James Morton, of course, you invest in leaders when you invest in organizations. And I think I would love to see that trend continue. And Mackenzie certainly has been groundbreaking in that area around trust-based philanthropy. Listen, I think all women know that we're superheroes, right? We know our superpowers, and I think others are starting to catch on. And I think it's going to require a continued investment in young girls and women intentionally with organizations like I mentioned. But we can't lose sight of that if we want things to continue to change and continue to invest in women and empower them to be in positions of influence, to continue that change and pay it forward. So sort of long-winded answer, but I see us moving in the right direction. We just have got to continue the investment.
Great, excellent. And Melissa?
Well, I think, as Pam mentioned, women's wealth is rising. And according to the research across all income levels and generations, women are more likely to give and give more than their male counterparts. And they give differently. So their giving is more motivated, as I mentioned, by empathy. And that carries over, as was mentioned, through volunteerism, where you see the percentage of women that volunteer is 24% higher than men. And the research shows that 79% of those who volunteer also give, which is part of the reason that we run a Serve with Liberty program along with our Give with Liberty program. So what does that mean? What it really means is that, it may mean that there's an opportunity for organizations to build out more engagement for volunteers and to talk more about the lives that they're changing. And on the trust philanthropy front, I'm with Becca. And if we move in this direction as a society, then it's an opportunity for an organization to really showcase and heighten the profile of the leader and the leadership, because that is trust philanthropy. You're trusting the leadership of the organization. So every organization would want someone like James Morton at the helm.
That's great. And Pam?
So I'm actually incredibly optimistic about the future of philanthropy and about the future of the world. We have done enough research and work with our donors who have made clear that charitable giving is becoming charitable living, right? I mean, the next generation of givers are, they're not going to work for anybody other than an organization that stands for something. I was buying some, some workout pants or something recently, and it's like, did you know my company's a B company? And I was like, I actually know what that is, and that's amazing. But people in, those graduated from college today are like, they want to work for an organization that stands for something. So that's the first thing. The second thing is they're bringing their purse to the decisions, right? It's like, I'm only going to buy from certain companies who are doing things environmentally safe and in a way that's respectful of, my values. And so you're seeing much more power in that. And then third is, the next generation is incredibly generous. They may not have the capital yet, but they will at some point. And I think women are going to change the way that giving happens, because they're going to be, as we've mentioned, coming into significant wealth. And so they're going to turn and say, well, what was my experience as a young girl, as a young woman? Who are those out there that haven't had my advantages, and how can I help support them? Knowing now that there's data and research that confirms that support to women and girls can actually really drive systemic change long term. So I'm very optimistic about the future.
I cannot think of a better way to end this conversation than on the point of highlighting optimism. Because I do believe, the silver lining here that we all have to sort of embrace is through extraordinary crisis comes strength and optimism. And I'm so fortunate and happy to be my conversation with you three. I have such extraordinary admiration for all of you and the work that you do. It's been such a pleasure. I thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. At some point, I would love to sit down in person with the three of you and continue this conversation, perhaps over a glass of wine, which James should get us upon a later date. So thanks for having this conversation. Thanks for the Y for hosting it. And it's our job now to turn it back over to James Morton, who I think we all equally agree is an extraordinary person who led through extraordinary times. So thank you.
What a wonderful and engaging conversation. And I am so happy to partner with these incredible panelists. Everything you heard tonight is made possible because of the generosity of our committed donors like those panelists represent. Because of the leadership, commitment, and generosity of Shari, Katie, Pam, Becca, and Melissa, we can make certain that every child and adult reaches his, her, or their highest potential. Thank you for joining us for Spark 2021. We hope you enjoyed our program and leave us filled with gratitude for all that we have accomplished together during a very difficult time. Because of you, children continue to learn, families and seniors are fed, cancer survivors find wellness and belonging, seniors feel connection, not isolation, teens discover pathways to college and new immigrants find jobs, and homeless families find shelter and stability. Yes, the Y plus U equals nothing we can't do. Good evening and be well, everyone.